Joining me now is Republican Congressman Tom Reed of New York. He's a member of the House Ways and Means Committee. Congressman Reed, I know you weren't involved in the questioning or any of the strategy behind how the questioning was determined today, but let me ask you this. From what you heard in the testimony from these State Department officials, are you more concerned today about the president's conduct or less?
Less, to be perfectly honest with you, Chuck. As I've always said going into this, I'm looking for that smoking gun evidence of an impeachable, high crime, treasonous type of charge that would warrant impeachment and removal of a duly elected president. And I just don't see that. You may try to connect the dots otherwise, but I just don't see that high crime evidence that they're talking about so convincingly in their mind on the other side.
Does it matter to you if direct evidence is produced that shows the president directed this phone call, all of it, that it was, because there's been one of the defenses that said, well, the president, this may have been Gordon Sondland or Rudy Giuliani, the president didn't know as much. Does that matter to you?
I think the whole theory of the case is what's important to me. And, you know, what I see is a theory of the case that says president's investigating corruption on the issue of Ukraine inside the country with Hunter Biden and Joe Biden, who's a sitting vice president. That and on its face is a legitimate inquiry. Corruption is a legitimate inquiry. When taxpayer dollars are being given to a foreign country, you want to ask the questions about corruption. And, you know, from my perspective, being a defense attorney at times in a courtroom, if you want to do the analogy, when you have a legitimate argument to be made for what the action was based upon, we're presumed innocent in America, and this rush to judgment and conviction by the other side just shows you, I think this is about politics more than it's about substantive impeachment efforts.
There's a lot of things in Washington that are always about politics at some point.
You
can't really undo that at all. Well, let's go to the heart of the matter here. Do you believe the president, it was inappropriate for the president to use the investigations as leverage to the aid you guys in the legislative branch had already deemed worthy of them receiving?
When the executive branch is raising the issue of corruption, I think that's a legitimate question to ask. The aid did flow through, and that's what the American people, that's the good thing. The American people are going to be able to judge this at the end of the day, and that's a good thing. But, you know, the other issue that I think is being lost in this conversation is we are making impeachment a political tool in the toolbox that is just tearing this country apart and tearing Washington, D.C. further apart. We shouldn't be doing that now. And now to have impeachment as another tool in the political toolbox is very dangerous, in my opinion.
I heard that argument from the other side of the aisle 20 years ago when I was covering another impeachment. I mean, in fairness, it is whenever anybody's on one side or the other. And unfortunately, Congressman, a lot of viewers just look at that as like, well, of course he's going to say that because it's his side.
Well, and that's why we should learn the lesson of the Clinton impeachment. You know, shame on them. I don't support the Clinton impeachment. And that should have been a lesson. I mean, we put the country through hell in regards to that impeachment inquiry. We're doing it today in regards to the Trump impeachment. And you have an election. The people are the ones we should be entrusting. And this arrogance of Washington, D.C. that says we know better than the election results of the American people, I think we're really going down a slippery slope here with impeachment.
Do you think the White House would be better served by letting some of these folks testify? That it makes it harder to make the case that the Democrats aren't giving you everything that you want when you're not providing witnesses that you believe could be exculpatory? Should they be providing more exculpatory witnesses?
When you're talking about oversight and the roles in oversight, I think, you know, sharing that information and complying is something to do. But when you're talking about impeachment, overturning the duly elected decision of the American people, you know, you're going to have that separation of powers that rightfully needs to exist. That's at the heart of our democracy and the sustainability of our government, is to have that checks and balances and that separation of powers. So, you know, if they were pursuing oversight and not impeachment, that's a different conversation.
Well, how is that? I don't understand what the difference is between that argument you're making. I mean, in order to make the decision about impeachment, which is essentially a grand jury indictment, you're doing investigation to get that. That's what they're doing here. So part of what they're doing is oversight. They haven't voted on impeachment yet.
Yeah, but Chuck, oversight doesn't result in the turning back of the will of the American people from a duly held election. You are then destabilizing the American democracy, because now people are going to say, what? I voted for my president who was duly elected, and the power official in Washington wants to overturn that election.
You must be upset. The White House has made a decision not to cooperate with any investigations even before this was an impeachment inquiry. So I understand your defense about impeachment, but then what you're saying is what the White House's behavior before the impeachment inquiry has been is something you won't defend.
Well, and that is something I'm concerned with, just as I was concerned when we were investigating President Obama and the executive privileges that were exerted when we were going through that process. So I think that constant battle, and that is something that I would share concern about. When we're doing our oversight role, when we have our checks and balances in our congressional role, I believe Congress has lost its leadership role in Washington, D.C. Congress needs to exert itself back as an equal branch of government, and I would agree with that concern about the issue of oversight.
I believe there are 430 members that I think would agree with that statement these days. Hello, YouTubers. If you're watching this, it means you've checked out our channel, so thank you. Now do me a favor, subscribe by clicking on that button down there. Click on any of the videos to watch the latest interviews and highlights from MTP Daily and MSNBC. You can get more Meet the Press content every morning in the First Read newsletter. If you're tired of content that you don't know anything about where it came from, you don't have to have that problem with us. NBC News, MSNBC, MTP, and the Meet the Press mindset right here for you on YouTube. Subscribe now.